We are in the Bubsy 3D era of the Steam Deck. What do I mean by that? Well, the Steam Deck has the potential to be a fundamental paradigm shift for gaming, much like the advent of 3D games were a paradigm shift. First, there's the custom Ryzen-based APU that manages to outperform the previous generation consoles in every respect in a 15-watt handheld package. And let's not forget about SteamOS, the Linux-based operating system built from the ground up for gaming. There's any number of game-changing hardware and software that we could talk about. But for now, let's focus on controls. The Steam Deck has its novel touch-sensitive analog sticks. It has its haptic trackpads, the built-in touchscreen, the rear paddle buttons, and the more traditional assortment of buttons. But it's not just the physical controls. The Steam Deck also lets you map any method of input to any other. So your controller can emulate a keyboard and mouse, supplement a controller with keyboard commands, or any combination thereof. That's what we're talking about here today. Last year, Valve released Aperture Desktop, a story-driven tech demo that showcased the unique controls of the Steam Deck. And in it, each input got its moment to shine. From the trackpads to the analog sticks, the traditional buttons, gyro aiming, touchscreen, and heck, even button cords. Aperture Desktop demonstrated to us that the Steam Deck was more than the sum of its parts. It showed us the power of developing hardware and software designed thoughtfully and cleverly for one another. Sadly, however, Aperture Desktop was little more than a tech demo, a 20 to 30 minute experience set in the Portal universe. And you know what? We've actually seen that before. Aperture HandLab is a tech demo that exemplified the novel input methods of Valve's Index controllers. These controllers gave VR players a finer approximation of their real-world hands in a VR space. And HandLab demonstrated to the VR community just how powerful the Index's controllers could be. And then Valve came out with Half-Life Alyx. And as an enormous Half-Life fan myself, I've played through the game multiple times. One time I even played through with developer commentary on. And you can imagine my disappointment when I learned that some of the more unique gameplay features that took advantage of the Index's controllers had to be scrapped because other existing VR controllers did not have the same features as the Valve Index controllers did. And look, I get it. I mean, the financial pressure of developing any game, even for a company like Valve, meant designing Half-Life Alyx for the lowest common denominator. And that left several potentially innovative gameplay mechanics on the cutting room floor because competing VR controllers lacked similar input methods. But the fact is, I still opine what Half-Life Alyx could have been if they had focused solely on their first-party headset. But with the VR market being what it is, I understand why they decided to cut these more advanced features to allow other headsets and controllers to play the game. But you might be asking, why am I talking about this? Well, it's because for the Steam Deck, I don't think I can be so generous in my understanding. Look, Gabe Newell has cited Super Mario 64 as one of his favorite games of all time. He's stated that it's the game that convinced him to become a game developer. He's also said that he's always envied Shigeru Miyamoto, who got to design hardware and software simultaneously that perfectly complemented each other. So when Super Mario 64 was released, there were other competing systems with 3D capability, the PlayStation being the most notable. And there were several video game franchises that had tried to make the switch from 2D to 3D, most of which failed, Bubsy 3D being among them. All these games, Bubsy 3D included, suffered from floaty controls, stiff movement, a locked camera, and slow gameplay that did not lend itself to having very much fun. But then Nintendo flipped the script. They changed the entire gaming world in 1996 with Super Mario 64. The game was developed in concert with the Nintendo 64 hardware and its truly perplexing yet inarguably revolutionary controller. The biggest game changers here? The N64's control stick and the way Nintendo absolutely nailed not just Mario's movement through 3D space, but also control over the camera. Now, I'm not saying that they did any of this first, but what I am saying is that they were the first to put all the pieces together in just the right way and showed the entire gaming world, not just what was necessary to make a good platformer in 3D, but a good game in 3D. Without Super Mario 64, we wouldn't have the obvious titles like Banjo-Kazooie or Spyro, and Crash Bandicoot would probably be unrecognizable, but in Gabe's own words, Half-Life simply wouldn't exist. Entire franchises like Call of Duty may have never emerged, and gaming would never have evolved into what it is today. Now, it can't be overstated how important and transformative Super Mario 64 was to the gaming industry, and it's time that Valve makes their own proverbial Super Mario 64. Now, I'm not talking about a mascot platformer, but what it does need to do is show the entire gaming industry how to make a game for the Steam Deck. Valve needs to have the courage to release a title that takes full advantage of the Deck's hardware, demonstrate its latent abilities, and become the envy of the industry, and not be afraid of including features that are inaccessible to players who aren't on the Steam Deck. Now, does this game need to be exclusive to the Steam Deck? No. But should the Steam Deck be the flagship way to play the game? Absolutely. With any industry that has more or less stagnated in terms of innovation, it takes someone to come in and shake up the status quo. And I think that it's fair to say that controller input in the video game industry has stagnated. The Xbox controller, for example, hasn't significantly changed since the Xbox 360. The DualShock has been replaced with the DualSense, which basically only added force feedback in the triggers. That's about it. Meanwhile, the Deck's over here like, what, Sony gives you an unreachable trackpad? Boom, how about we give you 2 of them that actually feel good to use? What, Phil Spencer, you don't like gyro controls? Grow up, kid, here's a gyro that gives you as much precision as using a mouse. What, Nintendo, your 7-year-old hardware? Boom, how about handheld PC hardware that can emulate a freaking Switch? The fact of the matter is, the Steam Deck has the potential to revolutionize the way we control games, and precedent has shown that third-party game developers have way too much at stake with a new game's release to stray too far away from what's proven to make money. But Valve can, and in my opinion, they can't afford not to. Now, maybe one of the games Valve is reportedly working on is such a title, and perhaps they're developing a standalone Steam controller too that has feature parity with the Deck controls. Now, if that's the case, that would be pretty awesome, and they could stand to wait for the release of the controller. But if a new controller is not in the cards in the near future, Valve should have the courage to take a stand and push the industry forward with a flagship game for the Steam Deck. But I'd like to know what you think. Do you believe Valve should develop a game that treats the Deck as a flagship way to play? Leave me a comment and let me know. I would love to hear from you. Before we close out this video, I've got to mention my website, viewsync.com. If you haven't been over there, we talk about gaming, Steam Deck, pop culture, and other stuff that you might be interested in. Check us out at viewsync.com. I want to give a special shout out to my friends on Patreon and my YouTube members. It's because of these fine folks that I've been able to build this show into what it's become today. If you believe in the work that I'm doing and you want to help this show grow, you can become a patron or a member with the links below. It's all greatly appreciated, and thanks. That's going to do it for now though. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I'll see you next time.